Hello. So I know there's many different builds out there. There's Garotha's Purple Balls, there's Captain Lance's Archon of Blood, there's Rangers, Deadeye's Lightning Arrow, there's so many different things. Root 2 is cooking up some weird ass crossbow, totem, something something build. It's great. But I wanted to make a build that looked a little something like this. But better, faster, and smoother using some new, potentially experimental, potentially just doesn't even work tech that we have in this patch. So that's what I'm going to be talking about. But do know that anything that I talk about regarding the passive tree, anything that I talk about regarding the support gems, anything that I talk about regarding the existing skill gems might all have changed. We know nothing. We don't know what the new tree will be. We don't know what the new support gems might be in the end. There have been some leaks, but they're not confirmed. They could have changed. All that stuff. GGG could still nerf something. It's still the 29th for 1 a.m. There's still 24 hours for GGG to completely destroy everything, right? So with that being said, now let's talk about this. Before I talk about the actual mechanics, let's talk about the skills that we're going to be using and show some footage. So all of this is going to really revolve around freezing mark. Okay, and this skill you just put on the mark. It makes the enemy more easy to freeze, and when they die, they blow up. Right, so you see here, very nice, very smooth little cold explosion that happens from the freezing mark, okay? So we're going to be using that freezing mark combined with the new Deadeye Ascendancy called Call Shots to repeatedly mark enemies around us with that freezing mark. And freezing mark has no cooldown, at least not yet. If GG decides to add one, well, F. But for now, it doesn't have a cooldown. It has its own base damage, base attack damage on that note, and it has its own chance to freeze, so it can freeze monsters around it as well when it blows up. Okay, so that's freezing mark. Now, how exactly are we going to utilize freezing mark? Well, that comes from two different things, Cull the Weak and Fangs of Frost. So Cull the Weak is just a basic gap closer. This will serve as a huge movement ability now, because GGG did say that they've made so Cull the Weak and any sort of ability like this, I think that there's Hand of Chiula, I think, or something, where it now actually properly dashes you in range from a decent amount of range away. So that is going to be pretty damn good to gap close over to an enemy, especially when you're playing a melee skill. So you dash over into them. The culling part on this isn't really important for now, okay? It can be, but not for now. So when you dash into range of them, then you will stab them with Fangs of Frost, just like that. Boom. See that? Boom. Now, Fangs of Frost converts 80% of your fizz to cold damage and has, again, more freeze build-up. So, again, more freezing. So, it's just a nice, cheeky ability that freezes. And if you hit a parried up enemy, it blows up. Right? So, but for now, we're not going to be worried about the parrying part. We just want the enemy to die from just stab. Okay, the stab. So you see here, stabs, stab again, it dies, it shatters because it got frozen before dying, and that's very important too. So that's the main thing. You dash in range with Cull the Weak, your automatic freezing mark applies from the Deadeye Ascendancy, and then you stab them, and then they blow up the mark when the enemy dies, and then that mark then blows up everything around the monster that was there, as well as Herald of Ice will then proc, because this procs when you shatter an enemy with a non-herald attack hit, and freezing mark is an attack hit, so that explosion will trigger Herald of Ice explosions. Okay, so that triggering Herald of Ice explosions against just the one enemy. And if this mark works the way everyone wants it to, where when it says repeatedly marks enemies near you, that means when you dash in range to the first enemy and you stab the first enemy, all the enemies around that enemy will also have the mark on them almost instantly, ideally. Even if they don't though, even if there is some sort of internal cooldown before the second marks are applied, then, well, it's still fine because you're still getting the explosion. However, there are more explosions. There's more. There is no footage of the more part because that's completely new, but that is going to be cast on crit Cold Snap. So this is now completely reworked. It is now just basically Snap. And this says it can now be used on any frozen, shocked, or ignited enemy, yada yada yada, causing an explosion of the corresponding damage type, blah blah blah. explosion can chain react from enemies hit that are affected by the same ailment. So we go back to our thing over here. So you see again, in this situation over here, there's 3 monsters, right? 3 of them. And you see here, you see where this is? So in this scenario, let's imagine there's like 10 monsters on screen. Because in a map, you'll have a lot of them, right? So you froze them. Your Fangs of Frost will kill them. When your Fangs of Frost kills all those frozen enemies, it'll then freeze more enemies from Freezing Mark, from Fangs of Frost alone, from Herald of Ice, chilling them, not freezing, it'll just chill a little bit, and all that good stuff. Then that'll all be proccing your cast on crit, and then your Cold Snap will proc on all the frozen enemies, detonating them for a bunch of juicy explosive damage. So that's the first part. Right now, you know that is part A. Okay, you dash in range to kill the weak, Fangs of Frost, Freezing Mark pops, you get a combat frenzy charge because you froze an enemy, and then your cast on crit will proc when your freezing marks pop. Right, that's step 1 with Herald of Ice. Step 2 is that when you did that dash, when you went in range, you dashed, you got a frenzy charge from combat frenzy. Right, now we need to use this frenzy charge, and Fangs of Frost doesn't have any frenzy charge part. It doesn't have it. None of this does. Right? However, what does have a frenzy charge requirement are 2 different skills that we can potentially use. One is going to be Glacial Lance. Right, so Glacial Lance, it just tosses a large piercing lance that just does a bunch of cold damage, and if you have a frenzy charge, then all these icy lid will then explode, and then you saw it yourself, a lot of freezing, a lot of shattering, and that will then also trigger a bunch of Herald of Ice, a bunch of Cold Snap explosions, a bunch of Freezing Mark explosions, and even more Combat Frenzy. So there's that, and you can also support this with Barrage. This is a barrageable ability, so you can actually throw 2 or maybe even 3 of these. So that's really, really potent. However, I would actually recommend something else, and that is going to be generic Spear Throw. Okay, this is just the generic ability that you get innately from every single spear. You get Spear Stab and you get Spear Throw. And the reason for this is this consumes a frenzy charge to cause the spear to explode at the end of its flight. Why is that important? Because again, it gives us more explosions combined with the Deadeye Ascendancy that gives you 1 additional projectile. This throws 2 spears, and all of those spears then chain because of the other part of this insane Ascendancy node, where projectiles chain to marked enemies. So if there's more than 1 marked enemy, and you hit an enemy that's not marked, and then your spear will then chain over to that marked enemy, or both of your spears would chain over to that marked enemy, and then they'll blow up. And if you use chain support on Spear Throw, it will chain again, and it's just, it's a bunch of chains, bunch of explosions, so it will start to feel like Lightning Spear from 0.2, but better, because all of those spear throws are, again, they're proccing your automatic freezing marks, they're proccing your cast on crit snaps, they're proccing all of the Herald of Ice explosions, they're proccing all of it. Alright, a quick note about Spear Throw. Why I'm recommending Spear Throw? That is because Spear Throw is free. So instead of you wasting your Jeweler Orbs on another ability at Leak Start when you don't really have many of those, you can save all of them for Fangs of Frost, for Combat Frenzy, for Cull the Weak, for Cast on Crit, for Herald of Ice, even for your whatever else you might be using in your links. So you can use your Jeweler Orb on those, and you don't have to waste your perfect jewelers, your greater jewelers on Spear Throw, because in the end game, as you level up, you'll just keep getting more and more links in your weapons, so that'll just be completely free. For your weapons, for your items, on that note, honestly, one of the best ones will just be a Tangle Tongue, because this helps you cap out your crit very nicely. This does have full 20 stacks of crit weakness pointed into it, so 5% base crit is 10 base crit, 10 crit weakness, and if you proc a mark twice, it is 10 base crit, and that'll basically put you into maximum crit, even with the Sea Glass Spear. So either a Tangle Tongue or a Sea Glass Spear with a lot of fizz on it. That's it. Maybe you can use a Polisical Ring so that your Herald of Ice procs a bit more efficiently. I don't think this would be necessary. If everything works, you should be shattering everything without this. But if you aren't, then maybe you can use this in the early game at least. So there's that too. So yeah, that's that. And now for a visual demonstration and showcase for what this build will look like in action. This is you. Anyone that follows my build is automatically handsome. Okay, this is you with your spear and your buckler, your shield. Okay, and when you walk into range of this enemy right here, right, it will then get the freezing mark on top of it. You will then cull the weak dash into range. Boom. You will stab him with Fangs of Frost, stab, and ideally in the late game, or even in the whatever game, that first stab will be enough to kill any white or maybe even blue monster. And then they will freeze, they will shatter, they will blow up, it'll blow up the freezing mark, it'll blow up the Herald of Ice, that will then blow all of this up, and then all of this in front of you will blow up, and then if there's any monsters behind these guys, they will also get hit with this, and then your cast on crit will proc on them, and they will also be frozen because, well, freezing mark freezes stuff, and if they're frozen, then cold snap will blow them up as well, and that chain will just keep on going. Okay, so that's one thing. And then comes the other part. So now you're over here, right? Now you've dashed over. Now you're standing over here with your spear and your buckler. Okay, and now you see, oh no, there's like 70,000 monsters standing over here. What do? They're all angry. They're all talking shit about your mom. It's really bad, right? What do? Well, now your automatic mark will first automatically apply at least one mark. Again, we are going off of the assumption you can apply at least one, right? Bare minimum. If you can apply more marks, that'll be even stronger. But bare minimum, one mark. You very bravely throw your spear, your generic spear throw. You throw it at one of these random monsters in this big pack. The spear lands right here. The spear consumes a frenzy charge to blow up. Okay, so that spear then blows up on this guy, and that spear also chains to this guy because he's a marked enemy. He has chain, so he'll blow up again because the same frenzy charge will apply to all those spears, and you're firing two projectiles because of Deadeye, so the other spear will also go over here, and then you have chain on your spear throw, so both of those spears will then chain again to more enemies, and they'll also blow up, and all of this will also be proccing your cast on crit snap, so if anything freezes in here, or if you have any other type of element in your spear that'll also be applying over here, then snap will blow that up too. So it'll just be a bunch of explosions here. And your freezing mark is also blowing up. Don't forget, there is a mark on this guy. That mark also blows up. And not done yet, your Herald of Ice then also is blowing up on all of them because it blows up when you shatter an enemy with a non-herald attack hit. Your spear throw is an attack. Your freezing mark is an attack. So all of that stuff will just make these 70 million monsters just straight up go boom in a massive explosion of cold and fun. Okay, that's the build. It's a Fangs of Frost, Cull the Weak, cast on crit snap, spear throw, Herald of Ice, freezing mark, Deadeye. Ha. But all of this fully relies on if there's no internal massive cooldown or something on this new Deadeye call shots node. As long as that works the way we want it to, then all of this should completely work. You'll just be dashing everywhere, stabbing things once, throwing your spear. It'll be what GGG dreamed of, where they wanted spears to be both a melee and a ranged thing. So you will be utilizing things like this, where you will, if you hit something with a projectile, you'll get even more melee strike range, which will make you dash even further, which will make your Fangs of Frost be able to be used from further away. You'll be able to use those support jabs, which make it so you deal like a bunch more damage if you've just used a projectile, if you've just used a melee skill, all that good stuff. The rest of this tree will obviously be very, very different because we have no idea what the past tree is going to look like. This is a very generic tree with just elemental damage, attack damage, chance to crit, crit damage, crit bonus, all the spear notes for crit and attack speed, elemental penetration, more crit down here, movement speed, some dex. I don't know if you'll need the dex anymore because they did say that they have reduced dex requirements. So there's more crit over here. This is very important. Taxa +1 to base crit. Very important over there. Some more cold pen, cold damage over here. This will probably change because it's no longer cold exposure. It doesn't exist anymore. Or maybe it does. But then we have more crit over here, and some more damage if you've dealt a crit recently over here. Very generic tree. This will absolutely be super different. I have no idea how that's going to look. I will update this accordingly. I will have a full day-by-day update of how the build is going, if it's even working. If it's not working, I will have that up and ready to go. The moment I hit Act 2, I ascend, I put on Freezing Mark, I will check if this is working. I will post it immediately. If it is not working, well, I will go Freezing Salvo Snipe or something, probably. Okay, so that's the build. One quick note, what are we doing for a single target? Well, even though GGG did nerf the absolute crap out of Sniper's Mark, right here, Sniper's Mark, 6-second cooldown. Before it was a 2-second cooldown. So that is going to be really harsh because you wanted to use Stormlance with Sniper's Mark. So you would basically throw your Stormlance down, and in the past, this would proc cast on crit Sniper's Mark, and then the cast on crit Sniper's Mark would give you a frenzy charge, and then your next Stormlance would blow up immediately. And ideally, you would have gotten 2 frenzy charges from your Sniper's Mark proccing Infusion or whatever that one's Protusion that gives you an extra charge. So if you have 2, and then you throw another Stormlance that procs cast on crit Sniper's Mark again because 2-second cooldown. So that's how that worked before. But now, because of this change, it's now a 6-second cooldown. So it's going to feel very clunky to do that. It might still work there. It might just be much slower. So we'll have to see how or what to do for single target. There is one thing you can do for single target, which might be viable, which is going to be this, the second portion of freezing of Fangs of Frost, where if you attack a parried debuff enemy, it does a bunch more damage and it blows them up. It just blows them up in an icy explosion. Okay, so that would be pretty cool. It would be pretty cool. Because now on bosses, everything is blockable. If you just raise up your shield, every single attack a boss will do is blockable unless it makes that thump sound before they attack. That's not blockable, but everything else is. So you just parry and you smack, and maybe you use that for single target if it's good enough. I don't think it would be though, but maybe. But so that's basically it. That is everything. That is going to be my experimental leak start. And if you have any questions about this, I know this was a very sporadic, erratic thing. I sadly don't have any footage to show for this. I really hesitated into making this video in the first place because I really didn't want people to get baited in case this doesn't work. But again, if you do want to try this, or if you want to see where this goes, I suggest just go Ranger. Okay, just go Ranger. Go Ranger, play as a Deadeye, play Lightning Arrow, play Freezing Salvo, play some sort of spell build that someone's playing. Play anything that you want. And then if my build works and you like how it looks, just literally, there's not even any respec that needs to be done. You just straight up pick up a spear, pick up a buckler, start using it. That's literally it. For the Ascendancy, there's one thing to note about the Ascendancy. So we will need endless munitions. So over here, I don't know if we're going to go point blank or far shot. It just depends on how far those spears will chain. But most likely it's going to be point blank. And then we'll be taking cold shots for the additional mark. And then we will be taking Eagle Eyes to apply crit weakness for bosses. Now, I don't know if we're going to need this. Maybe we won't. Like, I'm not exactly sure. Because if we take that, then we can't take Tailwind. But I don't think Tailwind will be viable anyway, because we're going to be going into melee range to use our spear, and we'll get hit and we'll lose Tailwind. So I don't know about that. We might use Avidity instead, because this now gives you a chance to get an additional frenzy charge when you gain 1. So this might help with the Stormland stuff. Who knows? But yeah, that's basically it. We'll see. I hope this was informative, or if this was just chaotic and you didn't understand a thing. Oops. I didn't really have any idea how to explain this outside of just using MS Paint. Who knows? But that is it, and that is all. I hope this was helpful, and bye-bye. And a quick thank you and shout out to all my patrons, Marcus, Axel Jacobs, and Bloom. You guys are amazing. And that one anonymous guy, you are also very amazing. Appreciate you all. Thank you, and bye-bye.